got a little ahead of myself. Okay, we left off in class today with the coercive acts. Probably guess the coercive acts which closed the Boston Harbor, replaced Boston's government with a military one, established that the colonists living in Massachusetts now have to house and feed even more British troops than before, and specified that royal officials could be transferred to Britain to be tried. All these things are not going to make the colonies and the colonists very happy. It just further angers them and unites them against Britain. So they are going to form another all-colony assembly, meaning representatives from each colony will be meeting together to convene and discuss what they can do, and this assembly is called the First Continental Congress. So they form another all-colony assembly known as the First Continental Congress. They issue another list of grievances. So they issue another list of complaints. They ask for the taxes to be repealed. And they also threaten to boycott all British goods. They threaten as well to stop all exports to, from going to England. But their hope right now is still for compromise. They do not want to rebel fully against England. They're just trying to speak their mind and take a stand, but they're still hoping to compromise. As you can guess, England is not willing to compromise at all and is going to increase military forces in the colonies. So England will increase military force in the colonies. Alright, we're going to talk about the Loyalists, which are also known as Tories. It's important to know that not all Loyalists not all colonists supported the Patriot cause. Some were considered Loyalists or Tories. Loyalists is implying they are trying to be and remain loyal to their king and to England. There are many reasons why some people felt that acting out against England was totally the wrong idea, and I'm going to list just a couple of them. One, some loyalists feared that rebellion would destroy respect for the government. Some feared that rebellion would destroy respect for government. What are we saying if we don't just obey our government? What could potentially happen in the future if we try to establish a government here? They worried that this would undermine the idea of government in general, and an oppressive government was better than everyone living in chaos, is how they felt. Some were clergy in the Church of England. And remember, if you're a part of the Church of England, who is the head of your church? The King of England. So they did not want to, try to uprise against their church and their Lord as well. And some just thought the Sons of Liberty were downright crazy and violent and thought it was way too radical of an idea. So those are several reasons why some people are loyalists. But what's important to know about the effect of the loyalists existing is that not only now do you have this struggle between the Patriots and Britain, But now you have an argument developing between the patriots and the loyalists as well. And you can kind of see on the image on the slide, it shows you kind of areas around the colonies that would have loyal, high loyalist populations. Okay, so let's talk about Lexington and Concord, which many of you know as the first battle, okay, of the Revolution. So the Patriots began to raise defensive forces to protect themselves against the British military in the colonies. They began to raise defensive forces to protect themselves against the British military in the colonies. We call these forces Minutemen because they were to be ready for battle at a minute's notice, because tension is building. Well, Massachusetts is at this point flat out declared to be in a state of rebellion by the king, so there was an order for the British soldiers to capture colonial leaders and supplies. There was an order for the British soldiers to capture colonial leaders and supplies. So on April of 1775, in April, not on, I don't know how you on April anything, but in April of 1775, British troops were sent to Concord, Massachusetts to do this. 3 men, Paul Revere, William Dawes, and Samuel Prescott, warned the Patriots that the British troops were coming to Concord to attack. This is where we get the famous midnight ride of Paul Revere, thanks to Mr. Longfellow. The British are coming, the British are coming. And it's important to know that Longfellow gives the credit to one man, but all 3, Paul Revere, William Dawes, and Samuel Prescott, were charged with this task. But they warned the colonists that the British troops are coming. So, the colonial militia in Concord was ready and met at Lexington, which was kind of a middle ground, to try to stop the British there. So they were ready and they met the British troops at Lexington. And it's here that it's very clear the colonial troops were outnumbered, so they had to flee and head backwards towards Concord. So Lexington and Concord are 2 different locations, but the fighting kind of started in Lexington, or at least the initial standoff, but then the colonists will retreat back to Concord, and it's in Concord that the militia is much more prepared. They have a larger group there. And it ends up that the British actually retreat back to Boston when the Minutemen attacked. So the British actually retreat back to Boston when the Minutemen attack. So fighting has officially begun in the Revolution, even though independence has not yet been declared. So it is important to know that Lexington and Concord happens before the signing of the Declaration of Independence. This picture is showing the signal, a church that the signal lanterns were displayed at for the Minutemen. And it's kind of like displaying Paul Revere's posts and his route and his grave at the top. The statue honoring him in Massachusetts. I'm sorry if I didn't get to that one quite yet. Okay, and this is where the Lexington militia gathered as they tried to meet the British troops in Lexington, but they would meet in Concord. Okay, so now we're going to quickly discuss the Second Continental Congress, because obviously the colonies feel like they need to reconvene once the Lexington and Concord event occurs. So the Second Continental Congress convened in May of 1775 in Philadelphia. In June, a month later, British soldiers attacked the colonists at Breed's Hill and Bunker Hill. So British soldiers attacked colonists at Breed's and Bunker Hill. This is often known as the Battle of Bunker Hill, even though fighting took place at both locations. After 3 attacks by the British, the colonists end up losing. You don't have to know the exact attacks, but just know the colonists end up losing and are overrun in this battle, mainly due to lack of supplies. But it was still a devastating loss for England because they ended up having 1,000 casualties. So in the end, even though England wins because of their supplies, it's actually a moral victory for the colonists because they realize, oh gosh, we can actually do this. We don't even have a real army yet, and we're, holding our own here. They were only defeated because of their lack of supplies. So it showed they could hold their own, even though they hadn't really produced a real army yet. So after this battle, Continental Congress, the second one in Philadelphia, will grant George Washington the honor of being the head of the Continental Army. So the Continental Congress, let's reword that a little bit, creates the Continental Army and names George Washington the head. Now, despite this motion, most actually are still hoping for peace with Britain. Most do not want to become independent from England just yet. So, continuing on with the Second Continental Congress, in July of 1775, Congress will draft yet another request of Parliament and the King, although it's specifically to the King, known as the Olive Branch Petition. And this is something we did learn about as freshmen. So the Olive Branch Petition, and think about what that means. Olive branch is a symbol of peace, right? So it's the colonists asking their king and kind of extending the olive branch to their king and pleading with him to, protect them against and from Parliament, repeal the oppressive legislation, remove the British troops. Let's call this a truce. Let's stop all this fighting. So the Olive Branch Petition is a plead from the colonists towards their king. They're pleading with him, please do not forsake us. And we are your loyal citizens. We just want to be treated fairly. King George will not accept this and declare that all colonies are in a state of rebellion. He declares that all colonies were in a state of rebellion, and he hires about 30,000 German mercenaries, known as Hessians. He hires about 30,000 German mercenaries, pretty intense. Hessians, I may have, we're not there yet. Hessians is Hessians. Hessian and mercenaries are hired soldiers. And he hires them to go to the colonies to basically fight for him in this battle. This resembles and portrays the disadvantage that the British have, because they have the majority of their soldiers now fighting for a paycheck and not being necessarily personally invested in the outcome of the war. Because the Hessians don't care about the mission or the motive or the inspiration like the colonists do. They're just doing their job, getting a paycheck. Okay. We're going to now move on to the Declaration of Independence. Woohoo! Okay. Remember, not all colonists themselves are on the same side. You have the patriots and the loyalists. Patriot leaders say, okay, the time has come. King George says we're in rebellion. We've pleaded, we've sent countless documents. They're not going to lighten up on us. We need to call for independence. And there are some examples of the patriots trying to sway all the colonists behind their now quest for independence. Patrick Henry gives a very famous speech in March of 75, "Give me liberty or give me death." He tries to gain support against the British. Thomas Paine writes a very famous pamphlet known as Common Sense, which flat out calls for independence, from England. It spoke very illy of King George III, saying that he is not your king, he's not protecting you the way he should. Said the colonies do not need Britain, they need to rebel. So it's these kind of more outgoing, active patriots who are fighting for this cause outwardly. They're publishing these documents that are trying to sway the mood and change the game of this mission. With all of these ideas floating around, finally the proposition of independence is brought up in the Second Continental Congress. Okay, finally they start talking about, okay, maybe we need to draft something and see what we've got here, and maybe this is the only choice we have at this point. So, at the Second Continental Congress, none other than Thomas Jefferson will be chosen to write the Declaration. So Thomas Jefferson was chosen to write the Declaration of Independence. He was highly inspired by John Locke and the Enlightenment, and he used lots of Locke references in his draft. And the Declaration of Independence was approved, not signed, but approved on July 4th, 1776, after much debate. And you remember that from the movie as well, if you got to see 1776. So it was approved after much, much debate. If they signed this document, they were signing their death certificate, essentially, because if they were caught and they lost the war, they would definitely be hanged. Okay, make sure you read the Declaration of Independence tonight. You can just look at it online. I'm not posting a transcript of it. I'm going to email you telling you what questions I just want you to think about. Remember, you should be reading it from the perspective of, are you an Englishman or are you a colonist? Okay? See y'all tomorrow.